Arik Gilbert has entered the transfer portal, and we got to talk about it after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You got to help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about 6'5", 250-pound Arik Gilbert, who has chosen to enter the transfer portal this after finishing his freshman year at LSU, and there will be no small amount of suitors for his services. He averaged just over 10 yards per catch at LSU, just over 30 catches this season, nearly 400 yards this season. Chose to opt out of playing the last few games at LSU, said that he was homesick. His mom came down there, and we thought that he was going to go into the portal then. He has since gone into the portal, and now it feels like Georgia has an opportunity here because Georgia was a finalist for his services down the line. He eventually said the fit at LSU just felt too good, and that was the reason he left his native Marietta to go to Baton Rouge. Now, this is also Gatorade National Player of the Year. This is the highest rated tight end ever, and it's really interesting to look at Georgia now more than any other school, to my imagination, as to what could happen. Because if you're looking at adding Arik Gilbert, you add him to 6'7", 260-pound Darnell Washington, who was lining up on the numbers as well as in the slot against Cincinnati. So you could have 6'7" and 6'5", either in the slot or over the numbers, and you could have them in twins formations. Like, it's nasty, right? Lining up a smaller safety over the top of those two guys. And then look at what Georgia has at its disposal. JT Daniels has already announced he's returning for another season at UGA. James Cook is expected to return. So that means you get every one of your running backs back. Zamir White, James Cook, Kendall Milton, who I think is going to be the best of all of those guys, to go along with Kenny McIntosh, and then Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis on the defensive line. You got one senior on the offensive line who was starting for the Cincinnati game. You have dudes that can play at corner. You have dudes that can play at safety. I was looking at the two deep for Georgia, and there was not even a Keely Ringo there, and that was one of my favorite dudes as an athlete coming out of that 2020 class. And Gilbert is the kind of player who can change the balance of power in a division and in a conference. You got to figure that Alabama is going to try to take a look, but knowing that they have Jaleel Billingsley right there ready to go where there is a Miller Forrestall, it gets kind of dicey. Plus, Alabama is not unlike Kentucky in basketball. You're going to play within their system, right? You're going to do what they ask you to do because it is a conveyor belt to the NFL. That would be the draw for an Alabama. You might be able to look around some places outside the SEC, though I doubt it. I know that there's some people that somehow think that Florida's going to be in the mix. I would be shocked if that was the case. I really think that it's Georgia, it's perhaps Alabama, maybe Texas, depending on what Steve Sarkisian can muster, but knowing that he's got his hands full with the national title game on Monday and that he has said that I am going to finish out my tenure at Alabama, I don't know that you're going to want to wait to see what happens there. Plus, it's about what you have, man. And if you're looking to compete for a national championship next year, you're really only looking at Georgia, at Alabama, at Clemson. Perhaps going to the West Coast, but that's tough when you look at what Oregon has, or maybe even USC. You could look a little bit further to the north, but one of the things that I'm keeping track of is how many guys or how many programs have returning starting quarterbacks. I mean, outside of DJ Uiagalelei, you're talking about Spencer Rattler as those teams, I think, have returning starting quarterbacks that can compete for national championships. Perhaps you're looking at Oregon and Tyler Shuck. Perhaps you're looking at Iowa State if you really want to put your money out there with Brock Purdy, who's coming back. They look good. They weren't good enough to beat Oklahoma. That's why I wouldn't put them there. Arizona State's also in that mix for me. And I'll have more to say about those things down the line. But right now, if you were homesick and you want to get closer to home and you want to be around moms, you could be worse places than going back to Georgia, man. It's not that far away from Marietta. Brock Vandegrift is going to join up in that 2021 class, along with a bunch of other vaunted players in that 21 class. Georgia just keeps recruiting. And that's the other thing that I think you want if you are a tight end pass-catching prospect. One, you want to know that you're going to find the ball, and you saw that against with Darnell Washington against Cincinnati. And the other is you want to know that there is a roster around you that is capable of beating Alabama, that is capable of beating Clemson. There's an Ohio State, there's an LSU, there's an Oklahoma. In some years, there's even, like a Florida State or Oregon. But right now, we're Washington. We're really just talking about those two teams, Alabama and Clemson, that you're going to have to beat to get to a national championship. And I think Georgia's going to be in a really good spot next year. And depending on how things go, I expect Mac Jones to declare for the NFL draft. I don't expect him to return. He's a first round, probably opening round late guy because he's a quarterback and because he's just been that good as a surgeon. Outside of that, man, I mean, you're talking about Bryce Young breaking in his first year as a starting quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei as well. You're really going to be in good hands with Todd Monken. I think JT Daniels is going to have more control of the offense. They teach them read coverage just a little bit better. He'll be okay because you're going to have all these assets around you to make things go. But for Arik Gilbert, it comes down to this, man. Do you want to jump into a Lamborghini that is built to your specs right away and drive off? Or do you want to get into a Honda Civic that somebody tuned up and, looks pretty good from the outside but doesn't have the horsepower to run with that Lamborghini? That's how I see Florida right now, right? That's what LSU is right now. They don't have the tools to go compete with the Lamborghinis in 2021. Going to be talented, right? They're going to get back to that Lamborghini stage quicker rather than later. And if you're betting on Texas to get there before LSU, I'm not inclined to go along with you. Another thing to keep in mind as we really try to figure out who those next tier of teams are. But right now, it's just Alabama and Clemson, and Georgia's fighting hard to try to get in there next year. And we also know that Georgia has played in a national championship game, and they've proven that they can get there with what I think is an antiquated offense, a 1990s pro style. They have since sort of modernized. They've tried to become a little bit more vertical. They didn't run the ball all that much or even all that well against Cincinnati. And they let JT Daniels throw the ball down the field. You have George Pickens on the outside. You have Kearis Jackson on the outside. You have Jermaine Burton on the outside. You're going to add to that. There's lots of good things to be excited about if you are a Georgia fan. And if Arik Gilbert decides to join up, could be curtains for 2021 in the national championship. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.